So the basics. TUPE stands for the Transfer of Undertakings Protection of Employment Regulations 2006. Even though it's called 2006, TUPE is not a new piece of legislation. It's perhaps unlikely that the Romans were too concerned about it in 100 AD. Romans, as we know, were notoriously bad at employee consultation anyway. It all began in 1981, which actually is another significant date that Colin mentioned at the beginning. In 1981, the government enacted the Transfer of Undertakings Protection of Employment Regulations to reflect the Acquired Rights Directive, which applies throughout the EU. When it first came into being, TUPE wasn't applying to outsourcing at all. Nobody designed it to cope with outsourcing situations. Nobody thought, oh, we need to bring in something that copes with outsourcing. TUPE really was aimed at mergers and acquisitions and businesses that were transferred as a going concern. And there's always this emphasis that the business had to retain its identity. That's been long established by the European Court of Justice. So for TUPE to apply, you always had to have the same business that goes from one party to another. And the question of it being the same business was decided by whether there's assets transferring, whether there's goodwill, whether there's stock, whether there are liabilities, etc., and so on. That all changed mainly thanks to a German cleaner called Mrs. Sutzen, who was responsible for cleaning a bank in Germany. And the bank decided that they were going to change Mrs. Sutzen for a cleaning company. Now, Mrs. Sutzen said, well, hang on a minute, you can't do that because I'm protected by this legislation, or the German equivalent of TUPE. And the bank said, well, don't be so stupid, what do you think you are, an undertaking? And she said, well, actually, yes, I do. I think that I, myself, personally, with my mop and my bucket, can constitute an undertaking. And she obviously didn't let it go, went all the way to the European Court of Justice, and they said, do you know what, Mrs. Sutzen is right. She is an undertaking. She, on her own, is an undertaking. And from that point on, TUPE began to apply to outsourcing. Because what the ECJ said is, look, it doesn't have to be a sale of a whole business. All we're concerned about is undertakings, and that's the word that's used. So you can have an undertaking is this one cleaner, and if those cleaning services, or what she provides, that transfers, and it's done in the same way, then TUPE applies, or the Acquired Rights Directive applies.